My name is Deb Finocchi. I am the president of the Central New York Disability Advocacy Group. It's a group we've started probably, I guess, almost 2 years at this point. So I think we'll just get started. We know that housing is one of our, really most important topics. So today we have two people from OPWDD that will, give us some updates on what's new, and we're going to start with Trish and maybe Karen. Thank you, Trish, for joining us. I know that you have a proposed housing plan for Smoky Hollow and Baldensville. Karen, if you want to say anything else, and then maybe you can just, share with us what's going on.
Sure. So I'm part of the leadership team with Deb and Drew, and I don't see who else is on the team.
Lisa.
I don't see her, yeah. So Trish and I go way back. We were part of an autism group when our kids were little, and she's been very active in advocating for different things and initiatives. So when Trish and I connected about something else, I heard about her initiative that she's trying to do a proposal from Drew. So we thought, why not invite her today when Vince is giving us the OPWDD, new housing updates. So we just thought it'd be nice to invite her just to hear what they're doing. So Trish Albanese, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, Karen, we go way back. When our kids were
the gray hair, yeah.
I know. Yeah, so I have worked on just trying to creatively find a solution. My son has 24/7 needs, and so that's the space where it is the most challenging, as we all know. My hope would be to try to do something in an uncertified way. So help to create a project and have a lot of families that I have been working with for many, many years. Patty Marvin is on the call. She's one of our families. And so, we're trying to figure out a way in a safe setting that individuals can get supports they need. And yet, self-direction is finite as far as the dollars. And so trying to be creative in how you use some staffing ratios to sort of share staff, but the building in itself, in the design of the building, is actually a big part of the support model. So it is sort of characterized like an intentional community, but it can morph and adapt. It really uses those staffing ratios. It uses some common areas that I think are natural sort of settings when people want to hang together or when they don't want to hang together. So it creates its own community, so folks are out doing their one-to-one staffing during the day, they're volunteering, they're working, they're doing their errands. And when they are in their apartment, they are part of a community and actually less isolated than they would have been probably living with their mom or dad and that kind of thing. So, we didn't think it was so radical at the time. I mean, if you are a numbers person and you look at, staffing and ideas, it's, to me, sort of a logical idea. But when presented to OPWDD, there are some hurdles as we try to create that opportunity. And kind of the nice thing about Smoky Hollow and our advocacy, which I want to talk about, is it doesn't cost anything. We're not asking for any money. We're not asking for any capital money. We are just asking to use the service dollars in a setting that hopefully will comply with OPWDD. So as we created and advocated for those meetings, we definitely hit, we stalled a lot in our conversations. And I know the tone has changed, which we're excited about, but in general, we wrote a law. We wrote a law that we hoped was a jumping off point to allow folks to have residential choice. And at the end of the day, what this proposed law will do is allow people to choose where and with whom they want to live. And so it becomes you know, a right. It becomes a civil liberty. And the devil is always in the details as you create what that model looks like. But I'm hoping for another alternative besides a group home for my son and for others. And the interesting part about Smoky Hollow or ideas like this is it's replicable. And it could live in a 3 or 4 duplex home. There's the ideas and the jumping off points are endless for people to create. But if we're not allowed under the current guidance to have a certain percentage of people, then that's what we really have to work through. And that's really what the law is meant to be. And if you want to look at our website, I don't know if Karen shared that. There's a link to smokyhollowbeeville.com if you want to look at that. And we're trying to, you know, make some inroads in the housing crisis that we face. So we have bipartisan support. We have bill sponsors and bill co-sponsors, Tom Abenanti and John Mannion, who you guys are probably all as a group super well aware of. They have been amazing, amazing colleagues to work with. It has felt very collaborative. So in a nutshell, I don't want to take too much time because I'm not sure what the format is, but you guys let me know how I can share information.
Yeah, Trish, if you can send me a little more info and the website, I'll pass it on to the group. We do have our main speaker from Vin Schmidt from OP giving us the new housing reg. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Trish.
Yeah, you're welcome. I will just stop with sharing that there is a statewide press event on May 12th in multiple cities across the state. I will share all of that with you as well. Trying to get the attention of the press, and certainly Kathy Hochul. It will come to her desk hopefully, and this is a powerful group that you guys have. We are a big force of voters that she would not want to miss that opportunity. I think the optics would be not in her favor. So we certainly are hoping that she will support this population and this great need. So thank you.
Great. Good luck, Trish. Keep us posted.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Deb,
much.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Trish. We appreciate it. So now I'd like to introduce Vin Schmidt, who is the Deputy Director of OPWDD Region 2. He comes with over 20 years of experience working with people with disabilities. And he also, Paula Millard is also here, and she is in charge of housing. So I will turn it over to both of you. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions. So welcome. Thank you.
Oh, I was muted. This is Paula Millard. I'm happy to be here. I am with OPWDD, and I do oversee housing and crisis for Region 2. And I'm not sure if Vince has got his audio, but I did see him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I had to switch my microphones. I apologize for that. Having all kinds of technical problems here. So yeah, I tried to sign on early and then found out that the link wasn't going through my default browser, so I had to switch browsers and everything. So I'm exhausted already. But anyway, thanks for inviting us to speak with your group. You know, housing is, you know, the regional office for OPWDD deals with a lot of different things. We're involved in the front door and eligibility and self-direction and waiver services and a number of different things. But probably the one that engenders the most passion is housing. And for good reason. You know, every parent, every individual wants the ability to be as independent as they can. And every parent wants that for their kids. And I think the thing that we all experience the most is that anxiety around what happens after we're gone. You know, even for a typical, fully, is somebody who's fully functioning in our society, parents still have anxiety over that. When they have other challenges beyond that, it makes it even more complicated, and the worry is, I think, even greater. So we're well aware of that sensitivity around the subject and the concern, and we spend a great deal of our time trying to find solutions, trying to help people to live their most, to live the life that they really want to live. So when we were asked to talk about housing, honestly, we could probably talk for days and days on that. It's such a complicated subject. So that is a little too broad of a subject. So we're just going to give a kind of brief overview. And I think probably the most effective thing will be for us to try and field your questions so we understand what concerns you have. We may not be able to answer all of your questions today, but if nothing else, it helps us to understand what your concerns are and helps us to kind of drive our own processes. So, but hopefully we'll be able to answer most of your questions. So I want to, what Trish was just saying about there's a change in tone, I would agree with that. Recently, I can say that our current governor and our current commissioner both have spoken at length about the need for improving our housing supports within our system. And they're not just talking about it, through the, I don't know how many of you participated in the 507 outreach and those forums where you could speak to things. But one of the primary, probably the thing that was talked about the most was housing. And, so OPWDD is listening to that. That's our mandate, is to listen to the community when we have those forums and drive our policy. So, our housing strategy through those 507 forums and from what the commissioner and the governor are talking about is really multifaceted. It's to provide a range of supports that ranges from those individuals who need the highest level of support through the what we call least restrictive. We always want people to be in the least restrictive setting that they can be and be successful. And so that's terminology that we use a lot, but what I mean by least restrictive is where they are able to make the most choices in their life, where they're able to make decisions and succeed. There will be times when you're walking that line where you're looking for least restrictive, where people just like you and me will sometimes make bad choices and sometimes fail and sometimes suffer the consequences of that. But that's part of being human. So we feel passionately that people also have the right to make decisions that sometimes we wouldn't agree with. So our system, our housing system, does range from what we would call most restrictive through least restrictive, and that would be just receiving sometimes just housing subsidies, supports to help them be successful in the community. So, in our current housing strategy, there are several areas of focus. We want to strengthen the supervised group homes that we already have. They serve a very important purpose, and some people talk disparagingly of them, but some people recognize that they're a huge support in our system. So we definitely want to strengthen the supervised group homes to be able to serve people with complex needs who really need that level of support. We have, unfortunately, a number of people currently who need that, and there isn't the capacity currently to serve people who have that level of support, and that is problematic. We also want to expand the number and how much we use what we call supportive apartments. So apartments where people are most of the time functioning on their own, but maybe just get a little bit of staff support throughout the week, and that amount can vary. But so that's the kind of step down from the group homes. We want to increase just the number of certified housing options. And Paul is going to talk about the difference between certified and non-certified housing, but we want certified housing to be very much a part of our system going forward. And but we also are very interested in expanding, well, we call it non-certified housing, but I personally live in a non-certified house. I don't know if you guys live in non-certified houses, but you know, when we say non-certified, it sounds so clinical, but really it's just housing. So that doesn't happen to have that higher level of oversight of certified. So we want to expand the non-certified footprint and the non-certified availability of housing for people who may be able to benefit from that. The idea there is that there are currently within our system of certified housing, there are a number of people who maybe don't need that level of support anymore. Maybe they did when they were younger, but they've made progress. That's our whole goal with our system, is that people make progress. And maybe they will have made progress. I'll say, we haven't done a great job over time of helping those people to then transition from those higher level of supports to a lesser level of support, that least restrictive setting. So we're really hoping to design our system so that people can, as they make progress, be in the setting that affords them the most independence and the least restrictive supports. So if we can identify those people who are currently in certified settings that maybe don't need to be, if we build a capacity of housing for non-certified, then the idea is that we'll be able to, move people with, not move them, not tell them you're leaving, but work with them so that they see that this is something that this is, just part of life. This should be something that should be celebrated. The idea that you're making progress and you now don't require that level of support. So if we can have a full continuum of housing support so that people can be in the setting that's most appropriate for them, hopefully that will create the capacity that we need for people who are currently on wait lists. Everybody talks about our wait lists and knows that it's not easy to find housing currently. We're hoping to make it such that is an easier thing for people to achieve, is to get the level of support that they really need. And to alleviate the anxiety that families have in what's going to happen to my son or my daughter when I'm not able to advocate for them any longer, when I'm not able to provide for them. So that's what we're hoping to do. Our budget that was just passed really does put money where our mouth is. There was an enormous increase for the very first time in a long time in our budget for OPWDD, and a significant portion of that is designated to go toward these housing supports that I'm talking about. So that, the talk that the commissioner is putting out there right now with the governor, that we really want to invest in our housing supports. They're talking the talk, but they're also walking the walk by putting it into the budget, which luckily was just passed, and a significant, I had it in my notes and I'm like looking around, I was like, where did I put this? I'll come up with the actual numbers for you. But we're really excited because there was a real influx of funding for housing. I believe it was 22% increase off the top of my head,
Yes.
but I'll come
So
up
Vince,
with that.
just to add to that, I think that we had talked about this before. So the executive budget announced approximately 23 million investments in OPWDD housing resources, and that did include a 22% increase in the housing subsidies available through housing subsidies, individual supports and services, and self-direction programs. So you are correct in that that is a 22% increase specific to housing subsidies.
Thank you, Paula. So Paula, why don't you talk a little bit about, what it means? So some people are very well versed in what certified housing is, non-certified, what our process is, but we learn more and more. I was on a call earlier today with a parent who's very concerned about what's going to happen to their child as they get older. We had this long conversation about it, but unfortunately he had gotten a lot of misinformation over the time, and that was adding to his angst. So we thought we might just want to start with, let's just kind of put up so that everybody has a level understanding of what we're talking about with these terms. Why don't we start with that? So Paula's going to, kind of give you a quick summation of our system and the process. Paula?
Thanks, Vince. So at the regional office, like Vince had opened up the presentation, is that our office are involved in a lot of services, and that is the review of the individual's skills and needs, so that the enrollment of those and approval of those services is fair and meets the needs of the individuals, because we do have a certain capacity of services available to individuals in New York State. So we do have a process of looking at each individual that comes for housing services, and that those housing services do cover an array of different types of supports and settings. And like Vince had said, we have certified residential homes that are that kind of fall under the certified, in that they are governed or overseen by certain regulatory requirements, and that they have 24/7 supports and services available to them. And so if individuals have a higher level of need and higher level of supervision need, that would be an appropriate setting for them to receive those services in the community. And then we also have the intent is, as Vince had indicated, that we do look at the most integrative, age-appropriate setting for individuals when we look at allocating those supports and services. And so we have the supportive apartments program, where I know that there's some expansion now with what Vince had described with Governor Hochul and our Commissioner Carrie Neffield, that there's a real focus on that transition, so that individuals who may not require 24/7 supports are moving to a more integrative setting where they can exercise more independence and independence in the community in our supportive apartment programs. And so that is too also certified. It's under the certified umbrella, meaning they do also have regulatory requirements involved in sustaining that program, but they also offer supports where the staff that provide the services are trained in medication management. So if someone needs a little bit more oversight and assistance with medication management, and they're exercising some independence in the community, and they want to be more independent without staff there 24/7, they're supported in that type of setting. And then there's more expansion now and more focus on expanding those supports and services for those residential opportunities that may that are not in a certified living opportunity, and that is what's called the non-certified. So the non-certified, of course, is the apartment setting, and so our office does have involvement in that process, where individuals that are looking for a housing subsidy will be, they share their information and the level of supports that they may need to be successful in their own apartment. And in our office is ensuring that individuals not only are offered personal choice, but they have the supports and services set and established so that when they do live integrated into the community in their own apartment, that they have the available supports and services so that they can be successful in that setting. So we do ensure of a review process and ensure that prior to moving forward with a housing subsidy, that all of those necessary supports and services are planned for and arranged and put in place so that when they transition, that everything is set live to go. And so there's the continuum, and how our office plays a part in that is that we get applications to the housing teams, and the housing team reviews the needs, the supports that are required, and the plan, the care coordination organization's plan of services to support them in that setting. So I don't know if there's any questions about that process specifically. I know that there is a New York State protocol for the Certified Residential Opportunities process where there's a standardized application, and that application is submitted by a referral source, whether it be, it's typically the care coordination organization, but it's sent to the regional office, Certified Residential Opportunities housing team, and it's reviewed by a committee, and the determination of the category of residential need and the skills that the individual has, and the ensuring that if they do have the skills to live independently in the community, that they're referred to those opportunities as well, so that we can ensure that anybody looking for housing, that they are provided the opportunity to be in the most integrative, least restrictive residential opportunity. So there's the residential opportunities protocol where there's a list that individuals will be added to, and the process is that we have, I think approximately in Region 2, like 33 residential providers, and the referrals for housing is shared with those residential providers, and they review those residential requests against any vacancies that they may have. And we have a really good relationship with the residential providers, where if we know from the person's referral application that, you know, what their needs might be, what they're looking for, if they're active, you know, if they're young, if they're middle-aged, we do all of that filtering, and we work with the residential providers to provide them with those applicants that may be a good fit for their opportunities. But providers are also provided with the emergency list as well, the entire emergency list, so that they have the ability to kind of see and request anyone from that list. So that's the process, the statewide standardized process for the Certified Residential Opportunities list.
You can come on in and have a seat.
I thought I heard somebody talking, but I think it might be someone in the room that they were speaking to. But if anyone has any questions about that,
I just would like to piggyback off of what you were explaining, because
Sorry, 1 second. Just before we get into questions, can everyone just type their email address into the chat box down below? Just that way, as we have future meetings, we'll make sure that we have everybody on our list.
Oh, good idea, Deb. I just wanted to have you, since you were explaining things, towards the end of your explanation, you threw an emergency list. Could you explain to everyone who's on how that differs from the regular list of housing
Right,
applications?
so, sure. So according to the home and community-based waiver, there's levels of residential designation, and the designation has certain criteria that the individual circumstances reach. So if the individual is at imminent risk of homelessness, they reach the emergency needs list. If they're at an increased risk of homelessness, or if they're in a situation where they're at increased risk of health and safety, then they're on the substantial needs list. If someone is just looking for a change in residential opportunities, and they're just actively seeking, and it's not, there's no criterion that reaches the substantial need or the emergency need, then they're identified as the current need. So there's a 3-tiered level system, and it's outlined in our home and community-based waiver, and that's standardized criterion that is used to determine where individuals are on the certified residential opportunities list.
Thanks.
And that is also on our OPWDD webpage, and I'm just trying to see who's speaking. Is that Drew? Hi, Drew.
Hi, thanks.
Yep. We have our, the residential needs designation is on the OPWDD webpage, and if you click under housing, you can see that, and it kind of spells it out really nicely. I could actually get the link and I can add it on there.
Could you just add it into the chat, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
Deb, there is a question in the chat, which I can read verbatim just because it is
Thank
a little
you.
more technical probably than I want to try to make happen.
Thanks.
So the question is, I'm an agency supervising RN. This agency has an uncertified apartment. We have some individuals who've been started on medications and moving in, and some are not capable of managing their meds, and staff who are not med certified are taking responsibility and assisting with filling their med bars. I'm concerned that when those staff are off, the individuals are not getting their meds properly, and understand that I cannot intervene as the agency RN. How may I advocate to safeguard their health? So this is a question that's coming from the chat if you also want to read it yourself, but anyone want to take a shot at answering that?
Well, I can add in my 2 cents from where we stand as an agency that does not provide medication unless someone is med certified and the agency approves that. And I'm not sure of the circumstances, but I think, you know, if the staff is well-meaning and concerned as they are, they should not be filling med, cartridges. They should not be touching medication at all. It's one thing to assist somebody verbally saying, okay, this spot, what bottle do you have? Is that the right one? Okay, put in one for Monday, Tuesday. I mean, you can kind of verbally help in that way if it's written into their life plan or some kind of IPOP. But my understanding is they should not. So how you go from there, I'm not really sure. I think that they might need additional nursing services to make sure that's done. I know there's dispensers that can be purchased that automatically do verbal reminders. I'm not sure. Does anybody else have anything to add on that? I'm kind of feeling it's a big yikesy no-no, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, this is Paula Millard from OPWDD, and you're right, Karen, that if they're not, if they're not trained and they're under the certified program entity, they're not a trained AMAP staff, so they, they should not be administering or counting out medications. But what can be done is, I know that some pharmacies have, with the CCO's assistance, have established and set up where they will either order their medications in blister packs, or they will make an appointment to kind of put their medications in their medication box, so that's available to them. Or, and as you had said, community a personal care aide or nurse comes in and we'll assist them in setting up their medication box so that they can take it throughout the week independently. And there are adaptive devices that do offer a little bit more assistance with medication management that once set up, it's called the Medicube. And the Medicube is kind of like a medication dispenser that has, it's programmed that if medication is not dispensed or taken out of the medication dispenser, it will send a message to an identified number. It's typically, it could be like a natural support, it could be a community HAB staff, or it could be another support. But that person will know to kind of give the person a verbal prompt to say, have you taken your medications? Don't forget your medications, and ensure that they're taking their medications. So it's kind of more of a distance approach, and the individual still gets the prompting. And so there's some assistive technology out there for people to be more independent. But in terms of that whole regulatory requirement for staffing, if it's not a trained AMAP staff and they're going into an uncertified residential situation, they shouldn't be, they shouldn't be medication.
Paula or Vince, this is Paul. I'm just wondering if the expanded scope of nursing services would apply in this situation. I know there's a process for an agency to be approved to do that through community HEP staff, but I'm wondering if that might be a possible option for Esther to explore.
Yes, that is a possible option. And I know, Paul, that was something that we had spoken about in the past with meetings with Anne Marie Peterson. And that's really something that we encourage agencies to really look at, because if it can't be reached by the residential portion, like if there's no residential oversight, that there is certified community HAB program, and that application, what you're describing, would assist that service, being a certified service, to be able to reach that need in the community.
I have.
So
Go ahead, Amanda.
Hang on just a second. I just want to add to that, so for those of you who don't know, we just kind of said it, but community rehabilitation staff typically are not allowed to give medications. It does take a certain level of oversight that for that to be possible. And just so that everybody has right expectations, to my knowledge, no agencies in the Central New York agency area currently have that.
Not yet, but we're aiming to be the first. How's that?
Which is great, and we're excited about that. But I just, for those of you who might be thinking, oh, I could get my ComHab staff to do this, it's not something that we have available yet, but we're working with agencies to take that on, because it will improve, it will vastly increase available housing options for people if we have that in place.
Thank you for that clarification, Vince, because when you said that, I was like, oh gosh, it's not something that certified staff are able to do at this time. So it would require an application process and approval. So thank you for including that.
I think, Amanda, you had a question, and then we have some in the chat that we'll get to. So go ahead, Amanda.
I just had a comment to make about the meds. So if the staff knows that they're going to be going on vacation or not going to be there, they could always call to somebody else that is familiar, and they could have somebody else come in and get to know the person and be able to pass the meds or assist the other person as well. That's something that we do here in the residential sites, is we look to help from another AMAP person that's certified. So that could be another option as well, Esther, to reach out as well if you are concerned, to see if they do look to the other avenues as well and see if they have other staff that can help.
This, from what she said, this is an uncertified apartment. So.
Oh, I didn't read that part. So, okay.
All right. So one of the other questions that's come in, when my child when my child enters residential, do we know the criminal background of other residents? Anyone?
Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, that is not typically, that is protected information through HIPAA and other laws that are meant to protect health information. So no, that is not something that is typically shared or shouldn't be shared. However, in a certified site, staffing is designed to give the protections to the individuals who live there that require that. So, so staffing levels aren't static, meaning that they're designed, that if the makeup of a house changes because of the needs of the individuals, whether the person who needs, let's say, if the goal, come on, Vince, the goal of the staff is to protect everybody who's living in that house and make sure that they're safe. So, so that is the role of them. So it kind of, in theory, shouldn't matter what their background is. The staffing should be appropriate to make sure that everyone in that house is safe.
Right, and just to add to that, just so everyone knows, is that when agencies have vacancies, they do review individuals who have specific particular needs, and they do try to ensure that individuals with like needs are reside together. So if there is someone that has those specific needs, they are active in certain certain supports and services that are may not be for someone who doesn't need those supports and services, and that's kind of like that, the whole process of compatibility of compatibility of individuals cohorting together and living in a community home, and providers have a great, they know the individuals, they get to meet the families of people that are looking to live in that house. So to answer that question, to add to Vince's information, is that we do look specifically at the needs, and the needs are very specific, and people who reside together with those specific needs, usually live together.
And I think, Beta, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm from Rise Independent Living Center. I was just wondering if there was any kind of plan to make sure that the uncertified apartment options, there'll be some increase in availability. Affordable, accessible apartments is one of the greatest needs. And the reason I'm asking is because I've been getting calls from a life plan and other providers looking for options for their clients that are accessible. And unfortunately, there's not that many places we can refer to. So I put an example of Spring Village, which is a great development for people 55 and older. And they do have some options reserved for persons with developmental disabilities. So I was just curious if there's any plans to do any more of similar units, developments in another county. Is there like maybe a greater plan to plan towards accessibility and affordability? Because I'm sure everybody noticed that we are having a major crisis in affordability right now, and major crisis as far as availability and vacancies in private market. So those are my questions. I was just wondering.
Yes, those are good questions. I don't know, Vince, if you wanted to speak to that, but I think that when you were discussing about the budget that was passed and the announcement of the past budget for the 23 million in investments and the 22% increase in housing subsidies, there's also opportunities for agencies who want to become support agencies and partner with developers in developing and partnering with other entities in what's called the integrated supportive housing services, what's called the ISH, and that's what Spring Village is. And when agencies come to meet with these developers, we always encourage that a percentage of those units designated or proposed for OPWDD eligible individuals have accessibility. There's one that's accessible. Now, typically all developers like to make what's called universally designed, or making it so that anyone of any ability can access the building under IDEA, but the apartments themselves having larger bathrooms and larger hallways and things of that nature, but specifically ones that are adapted and specific to individuals that have more more needs than which may require a piece of equipment in the room, in the bathroom, or some sort. So yes, there, with the increase in initiatives and the proposed budget and conversations with providers in conjunction with new development and affordable housing, there is conversations about a percentage of those opportunities being made more accessible. And Vince, I'm sorry,
I'll just add the specifics of that. Our $15 million were approved in new capital funding in this most recent budget for the upcoming year, specifically for that, to expand the availability of affordable housing opportunities. It's very much a great interest in our agency. There's a recognition of that need for housing, and simultaneous to that in the budget was an increase in the amount that people can, the cap for what people can receive in subsidized housing funding. So in order to, because there's a recognition that those numbers have not kept up with fair market assessments. And so in this budget, there was a significant increase in that amount for that purpose. But it's very much like that really in the housing world for OPWDD, that's probably the most exciting part. There's really a strong interest in development of those integrated opportunities.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
No.
Just really quick, for the ones that are integrated opportunities, like for instance, the Spring Village, are those opportunities for persons with developmental disabilities as a certified setting, or are they considered non-certified?
Non-certified.
Non-certified, okay, great, thank you.
Okay, we have another question, and I'm mindful of the time. As we talk about the different options in housing and looking for other options rather than certified settings, and a person living on their own independently with someone of their choosing, how does staffing and safety measures put in place look like? And then how does that work in a non-certified setting? What will the qualifications look like? And will OPWDD still have oversight even though it is a non-certified setting? Sorry, it's quite a mouthful.
Yeah,
right.
that's...
So, go ahead, Vince.
No, go ahead, Paul.
So, in a certified setting, there's the regulatory requirements for agencies to follow to ensure individuals' personal choices and rights and things of that nature. Individuals who are living in the community not in a certified setting that's overseen with those regulatory requirements, they we work with their care coordination organizations to ensure that they're coordinating the appropriate supports and services that that make them most successful in the community. So, we are certainly we have the process where if individuals who are living in the community are receiving a housing subsidy, there's the new housing subsidy ADM that just came out on March 10th that speaks to the housing subsidy application process and the roles and responsibilities of the CCOs, the housing subsidy provider, or the FI, whether they're self-directed or traditional services. So, there's that involvement if a person is receiving a housing subsidy. However, if an individual is living in the community like you or I and not overseen by regulatory requirements and auditing and those things of that nature. We wouldn't be notified if there was a need unless a need was brought to the regional office's attention. Like if there was a certain situation where someone was having difficulty receiving services or getting services, or if there was a crisis, we're notified. But it's typically the care coordination organization that's interacting and working with people in the community to ensure that they have the appropriate community supports, whether or not it's OPWDD supports and services or just, you know, community resources. We, I don't know if you want to add to that, Vince.
No, I think you covered it well enough. I mean, if there are follow-up questions, we can, but I'm sensitive to the time, so.
I just got a quick jump on that. Just to be clear, so the funding that is now being allocated, is there a equal amount split between traditional waiver service funding and self-direction funding, or is this really geared towards self-direction budgets?
I'm not fully sure of do you mean the housing subsidy?
Yes.
The housing subsidy ADM, it applies.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you cut out, Vince.
It applies to both self-direction housing subsidies and traditional, used to be called ISS, now just housing subsidies. It applies to both.
Thank you.
And I see there's another question in the chat. Is there further clarification on the new interpretation on the 25-75 rule in those ISH or similar type housing situations?
The housing ADM, the housing subsidy ADM doesn't speak to that 25%. However, in the ADM kind of does address it does address that when there is going to be, when the housing subsidies are reviewed, that may be a part of the review. So if there are projects or whatever that are planned, that there will be certain criterion and more details will be coming out about that, but they could be potentially applied for.
Are there any other questions from anybody? We have a few minutes left.
What did ADM stand for?
Oh, it's administrative memo, sorry.
Okay.
What it basically is when there's a regulation, the administrative memo is basically how we are going to, it codifies how we're going to follow that regulation. So this is kind of our rules of engagement, more or less, the ADM.
I have a question regarding, because you mentioned something about existing housing. How is this budget going to support existing housing, you know, group homes, at whatever level they are? Is it going to be helping with maintenance, with staff, with
How is
the budget going to affect the housing now? Like my son lives in a group home now. How is it going to affect his community? Are you going through the entire state and saying, okay, this community is going to get A, B, and C amount, and this community is going to get, you know, are you adjusting things? Are certain communities getting more?
Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to
go ahead. Paul's a residential provider, and he can probably speak on that, but I'll let him have a chance to. But see, I think your question is, we see the incentives in the budget addressing the non-certified or more integrative opportunities for residential. What is it doing for the present existing certified opportunities? So take it away, Paul.
I was just going to say, I think the biggest benefit to existing residential homes is the 5.4% cost of living adjustment that applies to residential programs, but most other programs as well. And that's the largest cost of living adjustment that we've seen in a budget in at least 12 years, and provides a considerable amount of increased funding to agencies.
So,
Yes, and that's
the state won't be mandating how that is going to be used, but like Paul says, that's a significant increase in funding for agencies to be able to address some of the issues that have been kind of lingering out there. So it'll be up to the agencies how they will use that funding.
Okay, we're coming up to 1 o'clock. Any last questions before we sign off?
Does Agnes have a question, or is she signing off? I have a question.
I do have a question in follow up to my question that was in the chat. All of this sounds great, but what about the sensitivity issues around it? Because if we speak of people having the choice to go and live in the communities, and yet there may be an uproar because people only see persons with different abilities in one setting. So how will we get together as a community to break down these barriers that persons of all abilities have different choices? Because it's not going to be easy. It looks good on paper, but everybody on this call bears some responsibility regarding that. And if that is not looked at, then we can come up with a much bigger problem than we need to if that is not addressed.
So I'd like to just thank you for that question and or that comment. And you know, that's a whole other hour of talking about, you know, what that's a huge thing, and it's a system-wide, and when I say system, I mean basically our entire society-wide issue. You know, I'll just say that we've come a long way since people with disabilities were primarily in institutions, but we have a long way to go. And I completely agree with you that sometimes our housing, whether it's certified or non-certified, has the appearance that though people are not in institutions anymore, sometimes the mindset is still there of the communities that we're in, of sometimes even amongst ourselves. We sometimes have trouble taking ourselves out of that. I have a great deal of hope because I have a couple of kids who have gone through school and inclusive classrooms, and the kids that I see, their friends and everything, view people with disabilities so dramatically different than it was when I was in school. I have a whole lot of hope for the future for that reason. But I am under no misconceptions that we're there. We have a lot of work to do, and I really appreciate you speaking up and saying that.
Yes, and to speak to that too, Agnes, thank you. Just to add to Vince, we do encourage with these integrative supportive housing opportunities and agencies that partner with developers that, you know, we don't want, you know, we want to ensure that individuals have the same opportunities, and that the opportunities that are involved in that community living are for everyone. And so there is great interest with the developers and with the agencies involved to do like a trunk or treat that involves the entire complex, not just this is the individuals that are in the OPWDD units have a trunk or treat. They open it up to opportunities for the entire building, and we're seeing a lot more of an openness to the community and integrating in these opportunities. So, and agencies are advocating individuals who are living in these, you know, living in the community are advocating, and they have advocacy groups that are getting involved. So you're right about that. Every one of us has a role and responsibility to ensure at every level and everything that we touch that this is happening, that they have a full access to the community, and that, you know, that we're ensuring that this is happening.
And I know we're running out of time, but I just want to add to that, you know, around the, you know, the question we had about developing more of these integrated housing projects, that sort of thing. One of the things that we're very concerned about is the appearance of that setting as being the other. And that's kind of the expression that we use. We don't want these settings to be like everybody knows, oh, that's the place where the people with disabilities live. We want these settings to be seen as part of the community, just like every other house or every other apartment in the community. So we really are very sensitive to that idea of not creating a situation of the other. So.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to end, but thank you, Paula and Vince.
Before you hang up, Deb.
Yes.
Before you hang up, I just wanted to see if our lovely speakers could give participants next steps. Like if they have more questions, who can they contact? And, you know, who can they talk to? Because I think sometimes that's the most frustrating part. Where do I start?
Good question.
It's a very good question, and a couple of different answers. In most respects, your first starting point should always be your care manager, because they're the one that is going to be side by side with you, working through these things, and in theory should be the ones knowing what services are out there, and also advocating for other things. So I would start with your care manager. But that is also with a recognition that we have, unfortunately, a lot of care managers who are very new and haven't learned how to negotiate the system super well. So we are also sensitive to that. So in those situations, you're always welcome to reach out to the regional office, to our housing, specifically to our housing department for questions related to this. And if you're not even really sure what your question is, you're also welcome to reach out to me. You're also welcome to reach out to Paula, and we will either, you know, be able to give you an answer or direct your question elsewhere. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
That would be great if you both could do that. Perfect.
I beat Vince.
Hey.
Well done. So I think we thank you both so much, and I think Trish has already gone. And thank you everyone for joining. We meet every other month. We hope to have other topics, so please, you know, look at our Facebook page, and hopefully the next time there won't be so many technical difficulties. But it was a great turnout today. And again, thank you to our presenters. You know, I think it's a topic that is, you know, really important to all of us. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks
Take
again
care.
for joining us.
You're welcome. Bye. Thank you.